in the vein of all this rain, it kind of harkens to this one worry that's under the surface for a lot of people, particularly moving from the New York area to Florida, about climate, about weather, about what it means for homes. What would you tell them?
Well, I think unfortunately we're experiencing extreme weather all throughout the country. And while in South Florida we do have the hurricane season, which is, it's more heavily an issue in Florida than it is elsewhere, that we are equipped being in Florida to deal with the weather. And, extreme weather will happen everywhere. And if you buy a home that is properly built and hurricane proof, you're safe and sound, and it's still a good investment.
So, Melissa, given the fact that we have this tragedy down there in Florida, or at least, unfortunate circumstances, what's this doing to real estate activity and your clients? Are you still active, or is this really just frozen everything up?
It's really been pretty much business as usual this week, and we've actually had a pretty busy beginning of the summer season as well. I mean, I'm actively engaged with multiple buyers throughout the state of Florida who are purchasing everything from, a first-time home buyer, a second home buyer, someone buying, a larger home, people with wealth that are coming down and purchasing. I've seen activity, all along the price spectrum.
So that's a little bit puzzling, at least in terms of this week. My sources had been telling me that housing in Florida, similar to the rest of the nation, is down. So you're seeing more activity, period, this year. But even this week, it almost sounds a little bit FOMO-like. People are afraid to miss out on an opportunity despite the unfortunate circumstances of 20 inches of rain in Miami. What do you make of it?
I think that there are a lot of people who have made the decision over the course of the past number of months that they are going to look beyond the high interest rate environment that we're in and want to buy and have waited long enough and are just stepping into the marketplace. I mean, obviously, the level of activity today is slower than it was over the course of the past, during the pandemic, for sure. But there is still business going on, and I think that that's a good sign.
It's fascinating, and it's funny for me in particular to ask you this question, Melissa. I was one of those people that look past the high interest rates to look for a house. But why are people not waiting? Is the worry here that interest rates will start to subside and then prices will start to go up at a very rapid clip? Because it's kind of counterintuitive in some ways as well when you know that that rate cut could be just around the corner.
Well, the answer is yes. When interest rates come down, more buyers come into the marketplace because of increased affordability, and therefore prices are likely to go up. I mean, even in the face of higher rates this year, the average price of a home has increased, by like 4%. And there are people who want to get in now, figuring that they can take a higher rate mortgage, knowing that they'll refinance when the Fed starts to cut rates, and that they'll be able to, take advantage of today's price point. There's more inventory coming on the market. People have a little bit more time to look around and decide which home they want to buy. And, this will be an opportunity. When the Fed starts to cut rates, mortgage rates will drop, more people will come in, and prices will go up.
A lot of the commercial real estate folks that Sonali and I have talked to, Melissa, they have this year talked about the tremendous sensitivity to rates that within a week or two, a big move up or down can affect business. Are you seeing that sort of sensitivity for residential, even within that strength in Florida? And talk to us about the tri-state area, because you're up here too.
So the answer is absolutely yes. When interest rates, when the average rate of the 30-year fix dropped below 7%, more people are like, okay, I think I can do this now. Let's get the process going. There are also a lot of people who just need to move for life cycle reasons. You get married, you have children, you get divorced, you die. People need to relocate. So many people, were working remotely during COVID and then moved away and now have to go back to the office and now have to move back. And, we're seeing a lot of that type of real estate activity moving the marketplace. Once again, yes, the level of activity is lower than it has been, but I think it's certainly busier now than it was, during parts of 2023, because I think people think that, the end is in sight, relief is in sight, that the Fed will at some point start to cut rates and mortgage rates will come down. And why not get into the marketplace now?
Melissa, it's interesting to see you operate in the tri-state area as well as Florida because, of course, that narrative on the migration has been alive for a while, and there are a lot of skepticisms on how much it's actually happening. A lot of changing dynamics in the tri-state area as well. How do you see that narrative unfolding in the next 6 to 12 months?
There are still people that are moving down to Florida. Many businesses have started to open up offices in Florida, and people have the opportunity to work down in Florida. We do have better winters in Florida. There's more daylight, and a lot of positive reasons when you look beyond the summer hurricane season to actually live in Florida. And on the other hand, there are people who move to Florida who realize they can no longer work remotely, who need to move back up to the Northeast for business reasons. But there will always be people become of retirement age and say, okay, I would like to live in a warmer environment and move down to Florida. People who have retained second homes in New York and spend the winters in Florida. There are a lot of snowbirds that are in this area.